welcome back to another episode of Rink-Side with Hits and Clips. And in this episode today, we are going to cover the current standings for the OHL, WHL, and QMJHL leagues of the CHL. And, well, who's making the playoffs, who's eliminated. And at the end of this podcast episode, I'm also going to be covering a little bit on expansion teams. Now, if anyone is unaware, the WHL is expected to bring 2 teams into the league as early as next year in the BC division and a relocation in the QMJHL. So we will cover that shortly and maybe a little bit of the OHL too. But let's get started. If you're new to our channel, welcome. We're really grateful to have you join us on this journey as we cover all hockey leagues, including the NHL, AHL, OHL, WHL, QMJHL, OJHL, PJHL, and many more. We would really appreciate if you could go subscribe over onto our YouTube channel, like any videos that you see, comment down below if you have any suggestions or ideas of any topics or conversations that you want us to talk about or that we've already talked about. Be sure to go follow us over on our new Spotify podcast platform that we just launched recently and over on Bluesky. Twitter/X is no longer active on our end, so we are now over on Bluesky. Very similar to Twitter if any of you haven't been over there yet, but we would really appreciate if you could go give us a follow over there as we are building this channel slowly but very actively. So we are going to start with the OHL standings and just breakdown of who's made the playoffs so far, who is expected to take that last spot in the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference, and then we'll cover the WHL, QMJHL, as well as potential expansions for some of these leagues. We're going to start in the East Division, where it was the Brantford Bulldogs, the Kingston Frontenacs, and the Oshawa Generals all clinching a playoff spot. Out in the Central Division, the Barrie Colts clinched that playoff spot and top of the Central Division. The Brampton Steelheads followed right behind, the Sudbury Wolves, and surprisingly, the Niagara Ice Dogs. Now, since the 2018-2019 season, the Niagara Ice Dogs have not clinched a playoff spot and have not made a playoff appearance in the Ontario Hockey League. So they are expected to make that playoff appearance this season. The playoff matchups for the Eastern Conference are somewhat not confirmed as of right now at the time of this recording. But if either Brantford, Oshawa, or even Barrie finish at the top of the Eastern Conference, one of those teams would either be playing the Niagara Ice Dogs or the Sudbury Wolves, or even the Ottawa 67s or the North Bay Battalion, depending who gets that last spot in the Eastern Conference. Now, out in the Western Conference, as expected and as usual, the London Knights clinched the league, the conference, and the division for the Midwest. And the London Knights, they are going to be seeing another playoff run to claim maybe a back-to-back championship. We'll have to see. But right below them, it was the Kitchener Rangers and the Erie Otters clinching those playoff spots in the Midwest Division. And then out in the West Division, well, last year we saw that the Windsor Spitfires finished dead last. And I think a lot of us speculated, similar to the Niagara Ice Dogs, that they probably weren't going to make the playoffs yet again. But nope. They proved us wrong, and the Windsor Spitfires end up finishing top of the West Division, right above the Saginaw Spirit, the former Saginaw Memorial Cup champions of last season. But who's going to take that last playoff spot? We will see that the Flint Firebirds and the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds, and maybe even the Owen Sound Attack, are fighting to move up into that playoff spot. Now, the Flint Firebirds, the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds, and the Owen Sound Attack can all clinch a playoff spot if they keep their winning streaks going here. But the Sarnia Sting aren't too far behind the Owen Sound Attack, as they could steal that spot from the Owen Sound Attack, which could leave either Owen Sound, Sarnia, and very well the Guelph Storm out of the playoffs for this year, where North Bay and Ottawa, they're fighting for that last spot as they are just 2 points separated of each other to claim that last spot in the Eastern Conference, where the Peterborough Petes, it looks like they're going to be going yet another season without making the playoffs. 2 seasons ago, they did claim that OHL championship, but back-to-back seasons, and it looks like Peterborough will not be making an appearance. In terms of the overall predictions for the playoffs, if you tuned into my earlier videos on the channel before we rebranded to Rink-Side over on OHL in 20, you would have heard me predict that maybe it was going to be the London Knights and the Oshawa Generals yet again meeting in the playoffs for the finals. But the Brantford Bulldogs, the Barrie Colts, and even the Kingston Frontenacs are looking very fierce as of right now. As you would have probably heard on my channel too, me and Mike Poirier would agree on both terms that Kingston is probably one of those front runner-ups that you'd have to watch out for in the OHL. And surprisingly, they are up in 3rd place in the Eastern Conference, where last year it was both Peterborough and Kingston who didn't make the playoffs, and Barrie was that last team to get in. And with so many prospects that even the Barrie Colts have been bringing over, they are fighting to claim that first spot in the Eastern Conference. Brantford currently holds that first spot right now by 3 points. But if Barrie, let's say Barrie makes it to that first title by the end of this season, and just to remind you at the time of this recording, the OHL, WHL, and QMJHL seasons all end this coming Sunday. If, say, Barrie takes that first spot and let's say North Bay is that last team to get in, Barrie would play North Bay, Brantford would play Niagara, Kingston would play Sudbury, and then Oshawa would play Brampton. Now, again, the standings are very, very tight, and there's only a couple more games left in the season for these clubs. The Ottawa 67s, they're on the road tonight, and with the U Sports Championship going on at TD Place, they're going to have to try and fight to get all these points on the road before the end of the season finishes on Sunday. So all the matchups are not yet determined. The dates for each team's playoff schedule is determined, and a lot of these teams and matchups will be playing this coming Friday, but it's yet to be determined who is going to be playing against one another and who the opponent is going to be. But overall, I think we can pretty much count that the Peterborough Petes and the Guelph Storm are at least 2 teams who will not make the playoffs this year, and yet it's North Bay and Ottawa, and then I would say Sarnia and Owen Sound, and maybe even Sault Ste. Marie fighting for that last spot, where it looks like the Flint Firebirds could very well clinch in the next game or two. Now let's move over to the Western Conference, and well, it looks like that we have our top 16 teams who will be playing in the postseason, which means that the Regina Pats, the Red Deer Rebels, and the Moose Jaw Warriors of the Eastern Conference, and then the Wenatchee Wild, the Kamloops Blazers, and the Kelowna Rockets of the Western Conference will not make the playoffs. So at the top of the Eastern Conference, we have the Medicine Hat Tigers, followed by the Saskatoon Blades, Calgary Hitmen, Lethbridge Hurricanes, Prince Albert Raiders, Brandon Wheat Kings, Edmonton Oil Kings, and the Swift Current Broncos, while out in the West, we have the Everett Silvertips sitting at the top of first place, followed by the Victoria Royals, the Spokane Chiefs, Prince George Cougars, Portland Winterhawks, Vancouver Giants, Tri-City Americans, and the Seattle Thunderbirds. So that's the current status of the Western Conference standings and the Eastern Conference standings for the WHL. Now, if there's someone that I would have to really choose and that would really stand out, who would potentially have a good chance at making it to the WHL finals for this season, well, again, we can't really count anybody out, because the playoffs, it's not like the season at all, and that goes for any league that you play in. The season is not the same as the playoffs. So with the Moose Jaw Warriors, who won the championship last year, they sit dead last in the Eastern Conference, and which means we will not have back-to-back championships from Moose Jaw, which means we're going to have a new champion in the WHL for this season. But if there's one team that in particular stands out to me more than ever, it's probably going to be the Medicine Hat Tigers, and even the Calgary Hitmen of the Eastern Conference, where it's probably going to be the Everett Silvertips and maybe even the Spokane Chiefs of the Western Conference. So again, it's really hard to say because we haven't started the playoffs yet, but we do have a strong idea and a good glimpse right here of who's going to be in the postseason in the WHL. And then we're going to flip over now to the QMJHL. And this is interesting because the QMJHL is a league that I don't follow as often, except for the Maritime teams. At the end of this podcast, I am going to mention a relocation team that could really well change the overall atmosphere of the current city that they're in and the future city that they're going to next season in the fall. So in the Western Conference, we're going to start in the Western Conference for the QMJHL. We have Drummondville slating in first, followed by Rouyn-Noranda, Shawinigan, Blainville, Sherbrooke, Val-d'Or, Gatineau, and then Victoriaville. And in the Eastern Conference, we have the Moncton Wildcats sitting at the top, followed by Rimouski, Chicoutimi, Baie-Comeau, Cape Breton, Academy Bathurst, Charlottetown, Quebec, Halifax, and St. John. Some of these leagues are very uneven, which probably would match that one team from the Eastern Conference, say the Halifax Mooseheads. They're the last team to clinch in the Eastern Conference, but it's so uneven with the Western Conference that I would imagine that one of the teams would get a bye into the next round. Where you look at the Western Conference, you only have 8 teams in total, and only 6 of them are making the playoffs, where in the Eastern Conference you have 10 in total, yet 9 of them are making it. There's a very good chance that someone potentially either in the Western or the Eastern Conference are going to get a bye, and that would probably end up being someone in the Eastern Conference, I would imagine. But only time will tell. We'll have to see what happens. But that is just a look of what the current regular season standings are for all of these 3 leagues in the Canadian Hockey League. And, well, who's made the playoffs, who's not, and who's on the verge of potentially clinching the last spot. I was watching the Sault Ste. Marie and Sudbury Wolves game last night, and Sault Ste. Marie came out with a 1-goal win over a 3-2 victory over Sudbury. And so if we look at the OHL standings again, Sault Ste. Marie is sitting at 58 points, with the Owen Sound Attack just behind at 55, also tied with Sarnia. So I would say that the Owen Sound Attack and the Sarnia Sting are going to fight for that last spot, where the Flint Firebirds and the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds could very well get into those last 2 spots, to be very fortunate. We are going to move on now to our last topic of this podcast, and that's potential relocations for next season. Now, the 2 leagues that I'm going to mention here are very well set and they're confirmed, but out in the OHL, it's pretty much rumors of the future. So we're going to start with the WHL. So there are potentially 2 teams that are going to be joining the Western Hockey League in the BC division as of next season for the 2025-26 season. And with expansions, it's going to be Penticton and Chilliwack. And so those 2 teams will be joining the Western Hockey League as of next season. So out of all this will definitely put the Western Hockey League with the most teams in any league over the CHL, adding 2 more teams with a combination of 24 teams in total. Now, there has obviously been rumors and speculations of the OHL expanding to 22 teams, with the WHL team confirmedly expanding to 24 for next season. We don't have an expansion for the QMJHL, although we do have a relocation next year that is confirmed, and it will be Acadie Bathurst Titans relocating to Newfoundland and Labrador, and this has recently been confirmed. There was a whole press conference and a logo and design reveal out on the QMJHL Newfoundland team Instagram page. And very well, it's confirmed that Acadie Bathurst will be relocating to Newfoundland and Labrador for next season. Now, the team has already been renamed as the Newfoundland Raymond. Now, the province's new QMJHL team will be this new expansion/relocation team for the QMJHL. except their previous team used to be called the St. John Fog Devils. I have to say I really like the new name better, much better. And so as they rename to the Raymond, their overall meaning and history for this particular name is that they are honoring the veterans of, I believe, of the World Wars. But nevertheless to say, this will be the new QMJHL team coming into the league for next season in the fall. So this is just a glimpse of what's going on in the CHL standings for all three leagues. If you have any predictions of what may be happening or what teams might make the playoffs or who might get knocked out in the last day of the season, feel free to drop your ideas and thoughts down in the comments below. Again, we would really appreciate if you could go subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us over on Spotify and Bluesky. Bluesky is mainly for when we're going to be posting updates. Spotify is obviously where we're going to be posting our podcasts. And then YouTube, at the moment, we're only posting our podcast video audio files, but at some point we will be getting back into our picture video on our YouTube channel. So thank you everyone so much for your support. We really appreciate it, and we will talk to you in the next episode. Take care, everyone.